Chaf Hey Yud Zayin, 698. 698. If I could just trouble you to turn on the, well, we're going to need the air at some point. Okay. 698. So last time we were speaking about not being dishonest in business. And then on Pasuk Yud Zayin, this is something that's even more I think, even more common, if not relevant. It says, first look at Yud Dalet again. Look at Yud Pasuk Yud Dalet. It says, V'chisim kerubim kar biyadat lamisecha, right in the middle of the page. V'chisim kerubim kar lamisecha, when you sell something to your fellow, o kadom miyad lamisecha, you buy something, al tonu ish es achiv. Now you see that it uses the word tonu as don't cheat. How does the Art Scroll translate al tonu? Do not aggrieve one another, because that's really what it means. Don't hurt him financially. Then if you skip down to 3 lines from the bottom, it says, V'lo sonu ish es amiso. And again it says, do not aggrieve your fellow man. V'yaresa me'elokecha ki ani Hashem Elokecha, and if you're Hashem your God. So here, the do not aggrieve is referring to verbal abuse, what they call nowadays verbal abuse, what we call ona'as dvarim. Now, this is a very important subject. We're going to have to get clarity. First of all, the reason it's written here, according to the Mefarshim, the reason it's written in connection to business is because in business, that's when people end up, often in business, that's when people end up, what do you call it, saying inconsiderate things. Like, gentlemen, we just have to ask that any technological devices have to be put away. It's not respectful for the Torah. So I have no problem if people want to use them, but not while we're learning, either in or out. In business, people could come to exchanging, getting upset with each other and then saying inconsiderate things. Now, there are several categories here that we have to know. I want to go through this. First of all, in the basic idea is you can't say anything that's going to cause somebody, anything that hurts anybody's feelings. You certainly can't insult people, that sort of thing. But there are some a little more subtle definitions in the Gemara. One thing is you're not allowed to say, for example, you can't tell a Baal Tshuva, remember your previous deeds. Sometimes it happens where and this is not uncommon. I mean, it is uncommon. It's not uncommon, the first part, where, you got a guy who's a Baal Tshuva, and he starts correcting somebody in shul who happens to be a FFB. And nobody likes to be corrected in life. And the FFB may just turn around and lash out at him and just say, well, listen, buddy, 2 weeks ago you were eating pork. Don't tell me what to do. That sort of thing. And the Gemara uses that example. The Gemara says, why don't you remember what you were like? Because see, Baalei Tshuvas tend to take the halachas very seriously, as we should. An FFB may be a little bit more, okay, you can schmooze a little in shul, maybe a quick lashon hara, that sort of. And a Baal Tshuva may say, hey, what's going on over here? I thought there's a rule book. And therefore the Torah says, don't say to a Baal Tshuva, remember your previous actions, number one. Number two, you're not allowed to tell a convert, remember what your ancestors did, like where you came from. Very much very similar theme, which again, people may get people get defensive when criticized, or in any situation. Guy wants to join in. No, not you. Look where you came from. Your ancestors worshipped idols, or something like that. That's considered a noaz dvarim. Number three, you're not allowed to worry people. Sometimes people find it. We're going to have to, at a certain point, turn on the air conditioning, by the way. Sometimes people find it their holy duty to cause other people. I heard they're planning on using ballistic missiles next time. Well, thank you very much. What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to clap and say, well, wow, that's great. Good. Let's have lunch. You don't say, if you're, the rule is, and I always tell guys, the rule is, think about whether or not the person who you're speaking to, what you're saying is going to make them happier or less happy. Is the person you're speaking to going to be upset that you said this, or he's going to be happy that you said this? So I told you, we have a policy in our home. We don't always fulfill. We try to abide by a policy of, if you're thinking something good about somebody, say it. Say it. That was a delicious meal. That was very considerate of you, what you did for the old lady. That was better than, say it. Because, what are you worried about? You're worried about that people are going to become egomaniacs because you compliment? Don't worry, they won't. And the only way on the other hand, what do we usually say? We usually say the negative and we spare the positive. And it should be the opposite. It should be the opposite. We always tell this to parents with kids. Parents wonder, how can I motivate my kids? Well, build them up. Build the kids. Instead of constantly criticizing, if you're going to criticize your kids, you can start from morning to night and it doesn't end. For all day long. And if you find something positive, wives often ask how they can motivate their husband. Let's say, and this is not an uncommon question, my husband is always getting up late for minyan, or he doesn't daven in minyan, or he doesn't learn as much Torah as I want him to learn. So some people have an approach of, well, just accept your husband for who he is, and they bring examples from the Torah where people accepted their husbands. I don't buy that stuff. I don't buy that stuff. People can be motivated. How do you motivate people? You motivate them with positive reinforcement. If your husband does make a move in the right direction, compliment him. I always tell wives, a wife, well, none of you are married. I mean, you're not wives. But I always tell a wife, you know what? If your husband does something, one day your husband comes home, I'll get to you in 1 second. Let's say your husband comes home from the Daf Yomi Shir. Have a cake prepared for him. Bake him a cake. Bake him his favorite pie. And say, listen, I appreciate the ruchnius you bring into the home. That is a bride. Everybody needs to be appreciated. Who doesn't need to be appreciated? A wife does something good. A wife, what do you call it? Buy her something. Compliment her. Women thrive on that. Men thrive on it too. And kids thrive on it. So if you tell a kid, listen, wow, I was really impressed yesterday. You didn't hit your sister all day. Wow, here, and give him something. Okay, then the next day, chances are he won't hit her, or at least not as often. People respond to positive reinforcement. I did this once. I should have done this more often. I was on a bus once, years ago. A group of Israeli teenagers who did not look like the Chesed committee. And there was a frum girl. And they were starting to make comments. So I walked over to the one who looked like the ringleader. He looked like he grew up when meat was cheap. And I said to him, listen, I said to him, you have a good heart. Maybe and as soon as I said you have a good heart, so he goes, who said I have a good heart? Hey guys, cut it out. Who said I have a good heart? Because all of a sudden you hear something good, nobody's going to say, no, I'm not. I'm rotten to the core. Nobody's going to say that. Nobody's going to say that. So, it takes, I only did it once, and it works. It works like a charm. So if the Torah is telling you, don't say anything insensitive. I'll get to you one second. There are a couple other examples here, very, very important. You're not allowed to go into a store and ask a price where you have no intent on buying. You know that? That's called onoas dvarim. Why is that? Because if it's a sale, if the guy who owns the store, why? Because you're getting his hopes up for no reason. Hi, how much is that? How much is that picture on the wall, that painting over there, whatever it is? How much is the book that costs? The guy thinks he's going to make a sale, and then you just say, "Oh, thanks, I'm just curious," and you walk out. You are allowed to go in and ask a price if there's a chance you'll buy, because that's normal that you price it at stores. That you're allowed to do. But to go in just to ask, to waste time because you're waiting, you jump into a shop and you're curious, that you're not allowed to do. It's called onoas dvarim. That's called hurting people verbally. There was an interesting question that came to Rabbi Zilberstein. There was a Behar in the yeshiva who was starting to his Yiddishkeit was starting to, he was getting weak in his Yiddishkeit. He was starting to, I can't think of it. He's starting to leave the path. And one day he developed a cough. So he went to the doctor. Now the doctor knew that he had a bronchitis. And the doctor said to the guy, listen, they said to his Behar, listen, I don't know, this might be pretty serious. I think you better go for some tests. You might have a serious problem. I suspect something very, very serious. And the reason he did it is to scare the daylights out of the Behar so the Behar would then get back on the path, which he did. And then he came to Rabbi Zilberstein and he asked him was he allowed to do that. Rabbi Zilberstein said, no, you weren't allowed to use those measures. Why not? Where's the proof from Tanakh? Remember a woman named Chana who did not have children? She became the mother of Shmuel HaNavi, and she had a co-wife named Pnina. And Pnina would verbally provoke or torment Chana and talk about the fact that she has kids and she doesn't have kids. And she was doing it in order to get Chana motivated to daven harder. That was Ptina's motivation. She would torment her verbally, and the purpose was in order to get her to daven better. But at the end of the story was that Ptina's children started dying. Because you're not allowed to, even for a good cause, you don't torment people. You don't torment me, not supposed to, you're not supposed to hurt people. And therefore, the Rav Zilberstein said, with all good intention, you weren't allowed to have scared the wits out of that bacher. How will we get him to do tshuva? Some other way. But you can't use, the means don't justify the ends. Question, go ahead.
So, just the idea before about like criticism. So say like you give someone a chore and they don't do it properly, so...
Give them, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
So say someone gets a chore and then they don't do it properly, so it needs to be...
One of the kids.
Yeah, so how would you...
How do you correct them? Okay, so that's a good question. What if a parent gives a child, he got a job to do and he does a lousy job, or they don't do the job? So I always tell people, look, the way, sometimes you have to point out to the kid, but the Gemara says a child, a wife, and a student, smol docha, the yamin mekarevet. You push away with the left hand and you draw near with the right hand. So the question is, in other words, the relationship has to be that sometimes we have to, parents have to educate their kids. On the other hand, the same parent who's criticizing, do you also draw near as often and strong? If a kid was given a job, he did the job, it depends. Did the kid not do the job because he's lazy, because he's malicious, or he simply didn't know how to do the job? So first I have to make an assessment, why did the kid not do the job properly? You did a lousy job. So you have to find out, here, let me show you how the job should be done better, because maybe he doesn't know. Or if the kid is lazy, we say, we really have to live with a little bit more energy, and not everything in life is fun, and you can't only do the fun things. So they have to tell them. But not that it's the constant, kids there in certain houses where it's the constant negative. It's endless. It's endless with wives, it's endless with husbands, it's endless with everybody. There's always something negative, always something I could tell you to do better. But there has to be, in life, you find out people respond to positive motivation much better. Okay, that's as far as Onoaz Dvarim. It's just a general rule. A general rule is that you have to be careful not to hurt people's feelings. There's a lot more I want to get to today because we have a double Parsha, and there's a lot more on this subject. We have to go on. Just remember that if you don't respond to an insult, it's a tremendous merit. And if a person does not respond when they're insulted, Reb Chaim Kanievsky said they have the power and the ability at that moment to give a bracha. If you're being insulted, or you're being somebody is especially unjustly insulting you or degrading you, at that moment, if you don't respond, you have the power to give a bracha. How do you like that? There was a story going around in Israel, a very popular story. Years ago, there was a couple that was married for many years that did not have children. And they went to Reb Chaim Kanievsky, and they asked him for a bracha. A year, they went a few times to Reb Chaim, and they finally went to him. They did not have children for many years, and Reb Chaim said, I'm sorry, I do not have the power of bracha for you. My brachas, the gates of heaven are closed to my brachas. So the husband said, what can we do? Reb Chaim said, there's only one thing I could do. You have to find somebody who's being insulted and doesn't respond to get a bracha from him. Where do you go to find somebody who's being insulted? You got to get lucky. So the guy was at you know the story? The guy was at a wedding, and a friend of his was sitting next to him. The landlord came in and unjustly, in front of everybody, unjustifiably started berating his friend sitting at the wedding hall. And he just went on and on and on. And at a certain point, his friend was ready to respond. He was just sitting there the whole time. He didn't say anything. He was ready to respond. And before he could respond, this guy grabs his arm and says, don't respond. He says, okay. The landlord finished, walked out, and then he turned to him and he said, now give me a bracha if you have a child. The wife said, Reb Chaim Kanievsky said you should give me a bracha. She said, okay, I'll give you a bracha if you have a child. 9 months later, they had a boy. Documented incident. Adkan Hakofa Aleph. That's round 1. Round 2. There was a kid in a cheder, 9-year-old kid. It's unbelievable. It was a 9-year-old kid. And one day he was picked on. He was a kind of a neb, and he was being picked on. And the Rabbi noticed that when the other kids would bully him, he would mutter something under his breath, obviously, something not very nice. So the Rebbe calls up the father and he says, "Listen, your kid is being picked on. I'll try to put a stop to it, but he is muttering something, and goodness knows what he's saying over there." And the father said, "Yeah, I noticed at home too. His older brothers pick on him, and he mutters something. I'll deal with it." So he comes home. And the father says, "Yaakov, what do you mutter under your breath when people pick on you?" He said, "I'd rather not say." He said, "I know you'd rather not say, but I want to know, what is it that you say?" So the kid saw he had no choice. He said, "Well, Daddy, you know that story with Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky and the guy who didn't have the children? And he said, if you don't respond, you could give a bracha?" I said, "Yeah, what's that got to do with anything?" He said, "Well, what I do is I go around to the local shuls, and in the local shuls, every shul has posted a list of people who are sick and they need to be cured. So what I do is I memorize their names in the local shuls, and then when the other kids pick on me, so instead of responding, I say a bracha, I give a blessing that these people should be cured." How do you like that from a 9-year-old kid? From a 9-year-old kid. So adults have to know that you have a tremendous koach of bracha when somebody is insulting you or berating you, and especially when it's not justified. You have 2 choices. You can either respond or you can talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I think that option 2 is better. It's also harder. Yeah, you have to have the presence of mind to do it. It's a difficult challenge, but it's certainly a better idea. Okay, let's go on now. Take a look at Pasuk Yud Tes. So here the Torah is talking about the shmita on page 700. So pick it up at the bottom. Yeah. So Hashem says that you should, what do you call it? You're going to have to keep the shmita year, and then it says like this, top of 700. V'nas nahar it's pirya. The land will produce, it will put forth its produce. V'chaltem l'sova, you will eat to satiation. V'shavtem levetach alel, you will dwell in security on the land. And the Mefarshim point out that, there's sometimes the blessing can be a curse. If Eretz Yisrael is producing full, it's very productive and the produce is rich, well, that makes you subject to invasion. The other nations are coming in, and therefore the Torah says you'll have the security in addition to eating to satiation and having this wonderful produce. Then vishavtem levetach aleh, and you will dwell in security. You don't have to worry. You will not be invaded by the other nations. No foreign nations will invite you to take over your land. And then the Torah says vichisomru manochal bashana. What if you come along and you say, but what are we going to eat in the 7th year? We're not going to pray. We're not going to plant. We're not going to gather. So what are we going to eat? I will command that my blessing comes in the 6th year. It'll produce for 3 years. Now, what are the Jewish people going to complain about? What are we going to eat? So, is that a good thing or it's not a good thing? To ask God, what are we going to eat? What's the highest level of trust? The highest level of trust is God says, don't plant the fields. And you say, okay, boss. No questions. What if the Jewish people wouldn't do that? In other words, the Torah says, when you ask, what are we going to eat? So then you'll have blessing for 3 years. So the Mefarshim say, listen, to keep shmita is a high level by any stretch of the imagination. But if you ask, what are we going to eat? That's level 2. Level number 1 is not to ask. What would happen if they wouldn't ask, what will we eat for the 3 years? Then you won't need a lot of produce, because whatever is produced, you'll be able to consume it and you'll be satiated from a smaller amount. If you ask, you'll have produce, but you know what? You're going to have to go out there, and you're going to have to harvest it, and you're going to have to store it, and you're going to have to put it away. In other words, to the degree that a person has that belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you have less work to do. If a person starts asking, what are we going to eat? then at that point, then a person is going to have to do more work in the field. So it's a great thing to keep the mitzvah and even after you ask, but it's not the highest level. Now, what's the punishment for shmita? What happens if we don't keep shmita? Take a look at, where's the Rashi? Just one second. Where's the Rashi? Where's the Rashi says that the Rashi says one second. Where's the Rashi that says that they're going to be? Oh, in Yud Ches, I skipped it. Sorry, go back. I knew it was somewhere. Look at the previous part. Look at the previous Rashi. It's the bottom of bottom 698. Look at the Rashi. 3 lines from the bottom. See where it says, "V'yishavtem al haaretz lebetach." You'll dwell in the land in security. Shebe'avon shmita. Everybody said left column of Rashi. 3 lines from the bottom. Shebe'avon shmita, through the avera of not keeping shmita, Yisrael golim. They're going to go into exile. Shenemar astir Torah said, the punishment for shmita is exile. Why? Why is the punishment for shmita exile? You'll be thrown out of the land of Israel. Why is that the punishment? So obviously, what's the obvious reason? The most basic obvious reason.
You don't deserve to be in the land that you don't.
You don't to keep the laws of the land, so you lose the land. That's the on the simple level. That's why you lose what you're there. You didn't keep the laws of the land are to not work the land. You work, so God takes the land away from you. It's like your father took the car away from you because you didn't keep the rules of the road. Yeah, but Dad, I was only 42 miles over the speed limit when I got the ticket. Yeah, well, that's 40 miles too much. So you had the car, you lost car privileges because you didn't use the car, but that's standard. Okay, but there's a deeper reason. The deeper reason is that in order to keep shmita, you really have to believe in some sort of lemala min hateva, that God's going beyond nature. We're going beyond nature over here. You're not going to work the field, and it's going to produce more than it normally produces. That means if you keep shmita, you're buying into this policy of going beyond nature. You don't keep shmita, that means you don't believe in the policy of it. So God says, listen, you want to do it your way, you want to leave things to nature? Well, what happens when Jews are left to natural law? By natural law, one sheep with 70 wolves around them? By natural law, well, they'll invade the land and throw us out. What can we possibly do? You got much more powerful armies, Nebuchadnezzar and his armies, and then Titus and his army. I mean, you want to play by natural law, then natural law you're going to lose for sure. Natural law you're going to lose for sure. You want to play beyond nature. If you believe in beyond, so God Baruch Hu runs things beyond nature, which is the only reason why Jewish people survive. We're only surviving because lemala min hateva, but by natural law we shouldn't be here. How can we possibly survive where everybody's teamed up against us? The United Nations is against us. This country is against that country. Everybody in the world, no matter whatever problems it is because of the Jews. Everything is because of the Jews. Everywhere you look, it's all the Jews. Belgium is against the Jews. Now France is against the Jews. England is against the Jews. The BBC. Hey, nothing we do, no matter what we do, if we get tzedakah, it's because of, you're against the Palestinians. Something. So we don't have a chance by natural law. So God's saying, listen, you want to keep shmita or you don't want to keep shmita. If you don't live with beyond natural, by God's ability to transcend nature, so I won't transcend nature for you. So what happens? Then we're driven out of the land. 1 second. Take a look at what follows. Take a look at Pasuk. Skip ahead to Pasuk Lamed Hey. So the Torah then goes on page 702. All right. Your brother waxen poor. That's how the fancy translation is. You must support him. Ger v'tosha v'chai imach. If your brother is poor, you got to give him a loan. Give him tzedakah, give him a loan. You can turn off the air for a few minutes. People are getting cold. We got some cold air. We'll turn on later. People, I feel bad. People are not too bad, but I feel bad. So it says, if your brother waxen poor, So you have to support him. Okay. So why does this follow shmita? Why is this v'chazak? Don't let him fall. Try to extend him alone, or give him tzedakah, whatever the case may be. Why does this follow shmita? What's shmita all about? What do you say, Yos?
How do you know if you're at that position where you can help others?
Oh, if you got money and a guy asks a loan, if it's unreasonable, and if you're going to go broke by giving the loan, then you can't. You have to know. It's a good question you're asking. You have to know what the situation is and how trustworthy is this guy. We're not talking about foolish, reckless behavior. But assuming you could give a guy a loan, why does the Torah follow shmita with this mitzvah? What do you say?
Is it the idea that when you let the field, you leave it alone and let kind of God take care of things? So it's the same thing. You're giving that person opportunity to kind of grow without.
Very good, but the opposite. To the contrary. In other words, the Torah says when it comes to yourself, then you have to believe in God. All of a sudden, you have to trust God. When somebody else comes to you, the response isn't just have bitachon. Just have bitachon. To the contrary, the response to somebody else is be very, very. The Baal Shem Tov used to say. The Baal Shem Tov says there's a Gemara, and you have to say good question. The Baal Shem Tov used to say there's a Gemara that says every non-kosher item there's a kosher counterpart. The Gemara in Chulin and Daf Kuf Tes says that, for example, we're not allowed to eat pork, but there's some sort of fish that has the fish brain tastes like pork. And there are certain things that you're not allowed to live with a married woman, but you could live with a woman who's been divorced and her husband is still alive. That's almost the equivalent. And the Gemara goes through a whole list of things over there where there's something which is forbidden, but there's an equal counterpart. Denial of God, symbolically, being a kofar, is forbidden. When are you allowed to be quote unquote a kofar? When it comes to somebody else's needs. Obviously, we're not allowed to become kofrim. We're not allowed to become deniers of God. We have to pretend, the Baal Shem Tov said a concept. When it comes to somebody else, don't have bitachon on his expense. Have bitachon on yourself. If somebody gets hurt, what happens? You bend down to pick up your pen and you smack the table. You smack your head on the table. What are you supposed to say? Gam zu l'tova. This is all for the best. When somebody else smacks his head on the table, don't Gam zu l'tova, right? This is also for the best. Oh, no kidding. So then you pick up a stender and hammer him with the stender. Gam zu l'tova, right? And then you have a Gam zu l'tova fight, right? Yeah. Don't be such what do you call it? Don't be betachon at somebody else's. So, can you take that out of here real quietly, quick? Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Gam zu l'tova. Don't be a gam zu l'tova at somebody else's expense. The what do you call it? And so the Torah says the guy comes to you. The guy comes to you and he needs something. Get involved practically for him. That's why you find that the Gedolei Yisrael, when it came to doing for other people, they left no stone unturned. For your own parnasa, you make basic hishtadlus. For yourself, you make basic hishtadlus. You work 8 hours a day. You don't overwork yourself. It's not going to help anyway. When somebody else has needs, that's your own ruchnius, your own growth is going in full for somebody else, number one. Number two, you'll notice that over here, it says it in the singular. V'chiyamuch achicha, when your brother becomes poor. Look at previous page. Look at page 698, when it says it was all also singular. Lo sonu isha esamiso, singular. That means we have to relate to people. We have to relate to people. 1 second. No, there wasn't singular. It was plural. Sorry, got mixed up. Altonu is in the plural on page 698. It doesn't say altona, it says altonu. As a general rule. Velosonu ishes amiso. As a general rule. Here, when your brother comes to you, vechezaktem, it doesn't say vechezaktembo. It doesn't say it in the plural. It says in the singular, You shall support him. You shall support him. You shall support him. What does it mean? A guy comes to you. So what's the natural response is, well, I'll send him to somebody else. I don't want to get involved with this guy, especially if he needs money or a loan. So no, don't send him off to somebody else. You have to support him yourself. You have to try to help him out, number one. Number two, the Meforshim say, when somebody else is hurting, part of what we have to do is that we have to try to feel their pain. A guy comes over you, he's down and out, or he's in a difficult situation. Part of it is that, I tell you, did you ever hear of Rav Pam? Rav Pam was the Rosh Yeshiva of what's it called? Torah Vodas. So Rav Pam's son, many years ago in America, Rav Pam's son once found, I think, $50, which was a large sum of money. He found a $50 bill. So the kid was very happy. He didn't have a whole lot of money. The kid was very happy. Excuse me one second. Rav Pam was an incredibly sweet and sensitive person, and his son found this $50. And he wanted to buy himself a nice bicycle. So Rav Pam, and the halacha was he's allowed to keep the money. The money didn't have a simon, it was cash, he's allowed to keep the money. Rav Pam said, put the money on a shelf. Don't buy the bicycle just yet. Okay, could put the money on the shelf. After 2 weeks, Rav Pam said to the son, okay, now you could buy the bicycle. He said, what changed? Halachically, nothing changed. He was allowed to buy the bicycle. He said, what changed? So Rav Pam said, listen, a guy lost $50. That means he's in pain. How can you go and buy yourself a bicycle knowing that this guy is hurting over his $50? 2 weeks later, I'm sure the guy's forgotten about it. He's got other problems in life. Now his wife wants $50. So whatever else, something changed. While he's in pain, where's that sensitivity? So I read recently a story. This guy goes through medical school, and he's taking his final exam. For medical school. And the doctor who's giving him the exam, he says to him, what would you do if you saw a person is bleeding on the street? What do you do to stop the bleeding? He says, well, you grab a shmita, you grab a tourniquet, some sort of handkerchief or something, and you make a tourniquet, and you tie it up, and you stop the bleeding. He says, and what if there's no tourniquet available? He goes, I don't know. He goes, okay, you failed. You can't become a doctor. She says, what? I went to throw it. Because I didn't know to answer one question, I can't become a doctor? He said, if you can't find a tourniquet, you rip your shirt and make a tourniquet for him. If you couldn't think of that, that means that you're not empathizing, you're not sensitive enough. You can't be a doctor. You should have been able to think about that. A guy's bleeding, you rip your shirt to help him. So the Torah is saying, when a guy comes in, you got to feel for the other guy. It's not just a clinical, well, give it to him. Feel a little bit what the other guy is going through. Feel a little bit what kind of pain. The Gemara says when Talmud Chacham is sick, you have to cry yourself silly for somebody else to get cured. Imagine what this guy is going through. We try to block it out because we get too depressed. We try to block it out. But feel a guy suffered a loss. Think what the guy's going through. That's what the Torah is saying here. Okay, one last point. In where is it? The next pasuk. Here we go. What is that? What is the sensitivity you should have for people? Al tikach mi'ito neshech, don't take interest. The tarbis, there are two different forms of it. V'yaresa me'elokecha v'chei achicha, keep your brother alive with you. The reason Torah says keep him alive is because the Gemara says that what poor man is one of the people who, there are four people who the Gemara says is if they're dead. Who are these four people?
Poor man. Saras.
Saras, somebody has saras, a poor man, a blind man, and somebody doesn't have children. And the Gemara says a poor man is as if he's dead. Therefore, the Torah uses a very specific terminology. V'yaresa me'elokecha, fear your God. V'chei achicha imach, your brother should be alive. Keep him alive with you. That means by giving somebody support and sometimes giving a loan at the right time. And that's why Rashi emphasizes lend him the money before he goes under. Because if a guy let's say a guy needs a loan to keep his business going. Well, if you don't give him the loan, the business collapses, then he's really out. Then it's going to take a lot more to get him back on his feet. You can lend him some money to keep his business going, and he'll get. So then Rashi compares it to a guy. If a guy's got a donkey and he's got a load on the donkey, it's easy while the load is up there to readjust it. But once the load falls on the ground, 5 people can't pick it up. So a person who's down and out, a person who's starting to lose, a person who's losing his money, the Torah says, you know what? Help him out now. That could keep him on his feet. Don't let him go under, because if you let him go under, then the guy, then it's going to be take too much to recover. So why does it say v'chei achicha imach? Keep him alive. What's the consequence of lending with interest? The consequence of lending with interest? Oh, you always get it back. You get it back with interest. The consequence of lending with interest is that a person does not arise at the resurrection of the dead. Somebody who lends with interest, the Gemara says he does not get up at Tchias HaMesim. Why? Because you didn't because you didn't keep this people and give him life. So if you didn't give him life, it's considered a very severe avera. Lending with interest is a very severe avera. Remember I told you a story with Rabbi Akiva Eiger? There was a guy in town who was very stingy. He never gave tzedakah, and he lent with interest. And when the guy died, so his kids came to when the guy died, the kids came to the Chevra Kadisha, and they said, "Okay, we need a burial plot for our father." So he said, "Okay, 5,000 rubles." So 5,000 rubles. He says, "Your father did not lend with it. Your father lent with interest. Your father never gave tzedakah. We're charging you 5,000 rubles. The normal burial plot is 250 rubles. You can't charge us 20 times the price. What is this?" So he said, 5,000 rubles, or your father's body is going to lay out in the sun and rot. So they went to Rabbi Akiva Eiger. They said, "Hey, what's going on here? These guys want to charge a price gouging us. They want 20 times the price." So Rabbi Akiva Eiger said, "Let me explain something to you. I'll tell you what's going on here. You see, normally it's 250 rubles. Because when you bury somebody, it's a rental, because he's going to be getting up at Tchias HaMesim. But your father lent with interest. He's not going anywhere. So he's got to buy it outright. Right? For him, it's 20 times the price." That's what Rabbi Akiva Eiger said. So lending with interest is very, very severe in halacha. That's the idea of v'chei achicha imach, and therefore, why does this follow shmita? Why does this follow shmita? Because the Gemara says that if a person violates shmita, he'll eventually get to the point where he needs to borrow money, and he'll even want to borrow with interest. Now, he can't borrow with interest because Jews aren't going to lend him to interest. But the Gemara says he's going to want to borrow with interest. What's going to happen? This guy who violated the Shemitah laws, why did he violate the Shemitah laws? Because he doesn't have enough faith in God. So he's then going to go to his Jewish guy and say, "Hey, could you lend me money? I'll even pay you with interest." He says, "No, I'll lend you money and I won't charge you interest." What's the point of that? To teach him that there are people who are willing to relinquish their money even if they don't make a profit on it. And therefore the guy will then have regret that he violated the Shemitah. I should have had more bitachon too. Why is it that when you lend with interest, money we're not allowed to take interest for? What is interest? Essentially, I'm renting you my money. Right? I'm renting you. I'll rent you $100, and you should pay me pay me interest. Not only that, you're going to make money with my money. Why shouldn't I make money with my money? And the Torah says no. The Torah says no. You're not allowed to lend with interest. As I told you, we spoke about this once. One of the ideas is that you are allowed to lend to a non-Jew with interest, but a Jew not. Why? Because Jews are a family. If your brother needed a loan, would you charge your brother interest? You're not going to charge your brother interest. You're not going to charge your mother interest. A non-Jew, it's not family. You could charge interest. The whole world works on it. Get to 1 second. The whole world works on interest. So for a non-Jew, there's nothing essentially wrong with it. It's just when it comes to your family, you should be more sensitive, number one. But why is it that you're allowed to rent items for money? Your car, you can rent out for money. It's called a socher. That's perfectly acceptable according to interest. Now, money you can't rent out, but a car you can. Why?
Because it's an asset.
Shkoyach, and therefore what? And so what? You've told me what? You haven't told me why. So what's the difference? I rent you my car, or I rent you my $100, or my $5,000, which is the value of the car. What's the difference? What do you say? What's the difference between the two? What's the difference?
If you enjoy using the car, you can't pay with the money.
What? Why not? I enjoy your money. I'll go to the casino. I'll enjoy it very much.
It hurts.
And I'll even what?
It hurts more
What hurts more?
when give somebody cash to borrow and then just give them the same amount back. But whether you give somebody
That hurts. What hurts more? I don't want you. You're taking. I'm lending you $10,000. I could have been using that money to make money. I got to let you make money on my money, and I don't make the money.
You can't use the car when he's using it, but you still have money. When you
And I can't use the money when you're using it. I just gave you $10,000 cash. I could have invested that. Why? To the contrary, I'm losing money, and now that you're making money on my money. Why should I be able? The answer is that on items, there's wear and tear. There's wear and tear on items. If I give you my car, listen, there is wear and tear. I let you use my lawnmower, there's wear and tear. It's understood, even among family members. If your brother borrows your car and he breaks it, your brother's going to volunteer to pay for it. It's understood he's going to pay for it. Money is got a different category. We understand my brother needs a loan. That means he's hurting. He's hurting for money. I'll give him the money, he'll lend me. I don't charge my brother interest. Somebody who's not a member of the family, it's perfectly okay. You see, the world at large works on interest. Banks lend with interest, businesses lend with it. Everybody works on interest. That means that interest, according to one approach, interest is nothing inherently wrong with interest. Just you're more sensitive to family members. Whereas when it comes to rentals is understood that you're going to pay because there's wear and tear or whatever it is that Yehuda said there's the inconvenience that you're using it. I can't use my car now, whatever it is that you're compensating for. Okay, yes.
As a Jew, are you allowed to own bank stocks?
Are you allowed to what?
Bank stocks. Because they could be...
If the bank is letting, if there's what's called a heter iska. A heter iska means that the bank is essentially is making a, what do you call it? The bank is essentially the interest is being paid as an investment. It gets very complicated. At the end of the day, it has to be that it's done properly. There are halachic ways where you can take a loan and pay more than you borrowed, but it falls into a different category. It's not interest per se. There are halachic. It's very complicated. Anybody who would like to know more about it, you can speak to Rabbi Braidwitz. And on just about anything else. But there are the way it works is that it's more of an investment than a loan. But it is a halachically permissible way to take a loan and pay back more, but there's going to be an element of risk on both sides, as opposed to a regular loan where there's no element of risk at all. There has to be a theoretical element of risk that they won't get the money back in order for them to be halachically. All banks in Israel, if you look at the bank, they have on the wall what's called a heter iska. Heter iska means why it is halachically the halachic procedure necessary to allow them to lend with interest. Okay. All right, gentlemen, to be continued.